Welcome to the From Concealment Podcast, the show for firearm enthusiasts who like to shoot, train, carry, and compete. Get ready for some shooting and sight, firearm and accessory reviews, and of course, insight on concealed carry. And now, broadcasting from behind enemy lines in the From Concealment studio, it's Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams.
Hey, Freedom Nation, this is Pete Mitchell.
And I am Dan Sams.
You know, you're looking kind of dark there with all that light background behind you.
I realized that, and I don't know how fast. You know what? I can do this.
Woo.
Still dark, but not as dark.
This is nothing but the highest caliber and quality of podcasting available on the internet today.
It's true. It's true. We try to keep it really fancy. That's why I have this specialized set that's designed to look like my bedroom, but isn't actually, right? And so this allows us to have a closed set so the children don't interrupt or anything like that. And I try not to have anything incriminating behind me while we're talking.
I was just going to say, it's a good thing there's not like underwear hanging from the lampshade and, because that would be my room.
Oh, yeah. Well, so I once had a friend over to play pool I used to have a pool table in my basement, and washer and dryer were also down there. And this is when my wife and I, we'd only been married a couple of years or whatever. And we just hadn't learned about hiding certain things and whatever. And so played a game of pool, had a good time hanging out with my friend. I sent him home and I look at like all the things that were hanging to dry because they're delicates. And I'm like, oh, that's a little embarrassing. Sorry, man.
Dude, what's funny? This is a true story. So before I got married to my wife lived in her parents' house her entire life until the day we got back from the honeymoon. She never lived in a dorm. She never rented an apartment with friends. She lived in her parents' house. So her parents and grandmother always did her laundry. And I had the greatest rig in the world because they were like, hey, bring your laundry over. And they would do my laundry. Now, a lot of guys, it's like, well, you got your underwear in there. I'm like, whatever, dude. They're doing my laundry. Here's my laundry, right? So we get back from the honeymoon, and we don't have a washer and dryer at least at this time in our first place. And so we take our laundry over there, and literally it was like, I used to joke, I'm like, this is the greatest rig in the world. Like, I just put it in the hamper, and it shows up folded, like perfect.
Yeah, buddy.
So this one day I'm over there, and grandma is folding laundry, and she's folding my laundry, and all of a sudden there's like my wife's underwear, and she's like, well, I've never seen this in here before, right? But she's just yanking my chain, right? And I'm like, hilarious. Hey, well, we're married now, so that's just the way it goes.
The way it goes. Well, back when I used to do furniture delivery when I was between ministry jobs for a while, and we had uniforms, and Cintas would come and like pick up our laundry, but they didn't have a place for us to change at work, right? So you had to bring in your laundry from home. It was really annoying. And so I just had like a pile on the floor of my closet where the laundry would go, and just for my work laundry. So I grab it up one day, throw it in a bag, take it into work. And the Cintas guy is like, hey, there's like a woman's shoe in here, which is not as embarrassing as it could have been.
Right.
But it just definitely looked like some kind of a cross-dressing scenario. And it was just happened to make it in the work clothes.
Right.
Really awkward.
That's awesome.
That's my wife's shoe. That was definitely my wife's shoe. And they're like,
sure, it's your wife's shoe.
Yeah, like it's cool.
Dude, yeah. So here's a quick little update. 1 weekend on the carnivore diet.
Yeah, man, I wanted to hear. Tell us.
So, and by the way, and I told Dan this before we started the podcast. At the end of this, I'm going to do an update that I told Dan. I go, we won't do it live on Facebook because I'm not entirely sure if at the end of it, Dan doesn't just say, we can't air that one. In fact, I told Peyton, I go, there is absolutely no way I'm doing this one on the Church Planter podcast. Like, this is From Concealment Only is the podcast that I could possibly bring this to.
Yep.
But so let's just say there's some theory that is being tested. And we got some tests in, but we're going to get some more tests in, and we're going to see how it plays out over the 30 days, and we will go from there. I mean,
I like how you're like, we got some tests in. We're going to get some more tests in.
We got to test the hypothesis. I mean, what if it was just a fluke thing? We got to test, right?
Yep.
So that'll be a fun episode when we get to that one after the 30 days. So another 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it ends up being. So anyway, basically, all last week, all I ate was eggs, chicken, and steak. Not really even that much chicken. I mean, I had some chicken. Well, I had to finish off the chicken that I do a lot of meal prep, right? So I barbecue all of my meats and package them up. And I'm still like, I've been in this whole, weight loss thing for a while now. So I got some routines down in my life. And one of them is I weigh my food so that way I can track how much I'm eating as far as calories and all that type of stuff. So even though on the carnivore diet, like that's the cardinal sin, you're not supposed to in any way track your calories. They just want you eating if you're hungry, and that's it. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I get that, except that's for most people who are coming from a traditional, what's called the SAD diet, the standard American diet. I'm like, I get it for them, because for them, it's already a huge shift. Yeah. But I eat really clean. And I mean, I've ate really clean for a year now. So it's like I didn't go through all the stuff that they talk about. One of the things is called the keto flu. And that's really when your body is making the transition from what it technically is your body is addicted to sugar. And we don't think of sugar as addictive. We think of crack as addictive. We think of heroin as addictive. Sugar is actually more addictive than heroin. However, the withdrawals are significantly less. So you can break free of it if you choose to. And it's already went through that a year ago, right? I mean, and for me, I mean, they say it'll take anywhere from 3 to 6 days. We're technically 1 to 6 days, and the average is right around 3 days. It took me about 2 days. And how it hit me is I had headaches for 2 days. And that's literally your body going through withdrawals. It's craving the sugar that you've been feeding it. And I'm not talking about ice cream and cake, though obviously that's got sugar. I'm talking about all of our processed foods. They're dumping sugar in it like there's no tomorrow. One, because they know it's addictive. And two, because it tastes like crap unless they put in sugar.
Yeah.
Processed food is kind of nasty. And I don't really eat much processed food today. I mean, really, I'll eat, right now I'm not eating any processed food with the exception, and I'll get to my exception. I had one exception this last week. But protein shakes are pretty much the only processed food that I eat. And so it is processed, but it is also not as bad as most processed foods because it is, you can look at the ingredients and see what they've actually thrown into it. But anyway, so last Sunday really started the whole carnivore thing. In a lot of ways, my biggest concern, my absolute biggest concern is I go to the gym and I lift heavy weights. And I'm like, I'm not going to eat meat before I go to the gym because that just doesn't seem good, like a big old steak. And then I'm going to go work. Like, I'm thinking this can't be good.
Yeah.
So I was really concerned about my energy level because what I normally would do is literally I wake up in the morning and right before I jump in the shower, I down a protein drink and I eat a banana. Mm-hmm. And I use in that particular case, I use a protein shake that has higher carbs in it because I want the energy because I know I'm going to get in the shower and then I'm going to go straight to the gym and I want the energy so I can have a really good workout. So my biggest concern was, am I going to be able to lift as much?
Yeah.
Or am I going to be just too tired? And the weirdest thing, I am not even remotely tired.
That's really interesting.
Like I'm in the fasted state. I haven't had anything since dinner the night before. I go through, like today was leg day. So, I'm brutal on leg day.
Yeah.
And there is no change in energy. One of the things that you hear a lot of people talk about is there's no crashing after you eat. And I never really felt much of a crash because, again, I wasn't eating a lot of carbs. So for me, that didn't really change. But what I've noticed is my blood sugar is very much the same, like almost all day, just slightly goes up, doesn't really go up a lot. So I'm really curious because I'm going to do a blood test at the end of this to see how has it, see how has it affected my A1C? Because I'm thinking, man, it's not like spiking at all because I'm not eating any carbs. And I got a little, blood thing, blood test, a glucose test, and a ketone test. So I've been checking that thing out, and I'm like, dude, man, it doesn't matter that I had 1,000 calories an hour ago. I'm at 98, which when you understand blood glucose, that's really low. Like when you eat, you got to expect to be between 120 and 140. And it's like, I am below 100 and I ate an hour ago. Like that doesn't happen ever. But it's because protein and fats, technically, it's how the body processes them. I mean, it doesn't cause your body to spike because it takes so much longer for the protein to break down. So anyway, just really fascinating on that front. Still, and I'm down like another. I'd have to look at exactly what it is, but I'd say I'm down 3.5 to 4 pounds.
Wow.
Which for me, I'm kind of like, that's kind of surprising because I wasn't losing anything and I'm eating pretty much the same amount of calories. But again, now I'm eating 0 carbs as opposed to before I'd have, 50 to 80 carbs in a day, 80 grams of carbs, which is, again, not that much. But still, I mean, maybe it's because of that. Maybe it's, I don't know. I mean, we're following out this experiment.
This is cool.
I can definitely tell. And this could be because of the workouts too, finally being able to get back in the gym, but I can tell the muscle is coming back. A buddy who listens to this podcast, he reached out to me and he's like, I've been told that you pretty much can't help but build muscle when you're on the carnivore diet because you're packing in all of that protein. I'm like, but I'm not actually eating enough calories to pack on the muscle. So like there's 2 things going on in your body, right? You have to have a surplus of calories for your body to build muscle or fat for that matter. But if you're working out like I am and taking all the stuff that I take, I mean, it's like it's going to build muscle. And so, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's because, again, the gym's just opening up or what. But, we'll see at the end of this. So
this is cool, man.
So my one breakdown is every Saturday for the last, year, my family goes to basically get ice cream on Saturday night. Like that's our family trip. So the question was, is Pete going to have ice cream or not have ice cream?
Mm-hmm.
And my wife was like, you need to have ice cream because like this is a family thing. And I'm like, all right, but I really didn't want it. And that was weird. Like physically, I didn't want it, but I had it. It was delicious. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Mm-hmm. But that was like, 60, 70 grams of carbs right there in that one little dessert. So, I did have the blowout that one, but that's and I'll probably do that each week. I mean, we'll see, but I'll probably just, do that. But really the rest of the time, straight carnivore diet. So
party on, man. It sounds like fun. I'm interested. When I'm talking about the sugar thing, I can tell a difference when I've had very much sugar at all. Because we don't drink a lot of sugar in our house, where we don't eat a lot of sugar. The girls really like candy, but we'll allow like 1 piece a day. And we had an incident at the dentist and we're like, no more. So like we've cut that. So there's just not that much sugar in our house. And so, but if I have if I eat very much sugar, I feel it, man. I start to drag. Or if I eat processed, man, if I go to Taco Bell or if I go to McDonald's, I immediately feel it, which is kind of a nice place to be in. Cause then I'm like, man, I don't want it. I want something that is, treated well. And
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, one of the biggest, eye openers, cause I've said this before on various podcasts. I've probably talked about it on this one. I just didn't understand what I didn't understand about food and specifically how the body digests certain and how it processes certain foods.
Yeah.
I always just thought it was about the calories, like that's it, right? So, so what if I have a bean burrito, or what if I have a donut? It's a matter of the calories. It's not. Like, that's the reason why I was 100 pounds overweight, right? Was because the way your body processes. In fact, I saw this one documentary. In fact, it was the documentary that changed everything for me. So I'm watching this documentary. I can't remember what it was called. It was on Netflix, and they were talking about how the body processes sugar. And specifically, they gave the example of having a soda. And I think it was like a 24-ounce soda or something like that. Like you'd get at McDonald's or whatever. They're like, the way your body processes that, for you to burn off those specific calories because of their sugar and how quickly they're hitting the bloodstream, you would have to go run. It was like 2.5 miles, like right then.
Cool.
And I was like, first of all, I'm not a runner. Like,
I hate running.
This boy has a gun for a reason. If I have to run away, forget it. I'm not running. And so and then I was thinking, well, dude, when I go to the movies, the small is 32 ounces, and I'll, drink that, and I'll have, popcorn or nachos or something like that. And I'm like, dude, and it was something like, at some level, it was like you'd have to do it 2.5 miles every day for a week to like burn off that one soda. Because again, how your body's processing it.
Yeah, it's not calories; it's what's going on with the process.
And it made sense to me the way that they explained it. They're like, "Look, you got your liver's got to process some things. You got your stomach, and they're going through the breakdown." And I'm like, "This actually makes sense to me." So the problem with the documentary was, it was really, here's all the problem. Here's what's causing the obesity rates in the United States. Here's what's causing the massive diabetes and pre-diabetes going on in the United States and the world, for that matter. But they didn't really talk about the solution. And so, and I remember Katie Couric was the host of the whole thing, right? She's the news gal. And so, so I started looking up some of the people at the end of the movie. I think they had a website, and I went and I checked out the website. And this guy had a book, and it was something like the 10-day sugar detox. And I'm like, all right, I'll give this a whirl. And that was literally what changed everything for me. Now, for those of you who are thinking, hey, this is something I want to check out, here's my health advice. I'm not a doctor. Consult your doctor first. And and especially if you're a diabetic, man, you really got to be careful when you start doing this stuff, because you can have serious complications if you're on medication for diabetes and you start, cutting out sugar. Like, the medication they give you is based on your current diet. So when you start to change it, you've got to do that with a doctor who understands how to do this. And that was, to me, that was another really eye-opener. And I know this is a gun podcast, guys, but we'll get to the gun stuff.
This is related, though, because you never know. Go ahead.
It's funny because, part of what started me down the journey is I want to carry appendix, right? And so you can't do that when you got a big gut in front of you. And I still remember this one guy going, people spend all this money on training for their firearms, but they won't do anything to get themselves healthy and lose the weight. Yeah. And I'm like, that's a good point, right? So, I mean, this was all part of my mindset shift, and all right, this is what I'm going to do. And so before I went down that rabbit hole, I don't remember what my point was that I was going to get to.
It's all right. We're learning.
But just the change in the diet and diabetes runs in my family. My grandmother had it. My father has it. I was pre-diabetic at one point. I'm no longer pre-diabetic. Actually, it only took me 3 months to get my blood sugar back down to normal. It probably was less than that. It was just, I took the test 3 months later, and it was like, boop, I'm like well under the diabetic or pre-diabetic range. And one of the things that I learned in all of this is that diabetes is a nutritional disease, and it's not seen that way. And unfortunately, our medical doctors are not taught about nutrition at all. And I mean, they're taught about medicine and, prescribe this, and this is how this works. And, this is what this is going to do. And so there are doctors out there that specialize working with diabetics that understand it's a dietary disease.
Mm-hmm.
And they have cured people. I'm like, you can't say that. Like legally, you can't say people have been cured of diabetes. But what do you call it when all of a sudden their blood sugar is back in the normal range? They're off of all medications completely and they don't have to take anymore. I mean, what do you call that?
Yeah.
Like maybe it's always on your paperwork that you're a diabetic, but yet you have no symptoms, no nothing. And I'm like, okay, well, this makes sense to me because what's the pharmaceutical industry after? They want to sell more drugs. That's what they do. And we're not taught about nutrition at all. And, so anyway, for me, with the guy who's got a history of that in his family, like I look at it now and I'm like, all right, there are just certain things that are no-goes for me, right? Like most of the time I eat exceptionally clean. One day a week, I will let myself do whatever I want on that one day, which for me at this point just basically means like on the carnivore diet, I had 3,100 calories of meat on Saturday because I was like, all right, it's my free day. I'm pounding in the protein. But again, it was clean, right? It's not like I'm sitting there going to McDonald's and having a couple of Big Macs and stuff like that. And then I did have the ice cream later that night. But so I mean, it's just the whole thing is, it's fascinating to me to see how quickly the body adjusts to everything that we do.
Yeah. Well, and so many people, they're adjusted to eating terribly.
Yeah.
And so that's their normal. And it doesn't take much change up before you're like, wow, this is better. But man, it's interesting to me to watch how people like they crave that large, Coca-Cola. And I'm like, man, I don't crave that.
Yeah.
But as I've been drinking other stuff that isn't as bad for me. And so when I drink the Coke, I'm like, oh, my life feels like I feel like I'm dying. And so people don't realize, as you mentioned, it doesn't take long to eat just healthier. And man, you feel better and you kind of don't want the other stuff that much. So then your cheat is like, well, I'll just eat more of my healthy food, Well,
what's funny to me is I never felt bad. I mean, here I was almost 300 pounds. In fact, I probably was 300. I just kind of guessed that I was 295 because I think when I went to the doctor, the highest I ever weighed in at the doctor was 292. But I mean, there reaches a point where it's like, I don't need to step on the scale. I know I'm fat, right? And that was kind of like me in that stage. And I know that wasn't the heaviest I was. So that's why I always say, well, I'll say I was 295. I probably was 300, maybe 305 at one point. But I'll use 295 as my, that's my high mark. And I never felt bad. The reality is I never knew what feeling good felt like. So that's why I thought I never felt bad. Yep. Because when I changed my diet, I was like, I can't believe how much better I feel. But when you live 44 years one way, like you're comparing what feels good to, that level, not like what could be. And that was part of the reason why I wanted to try the carnivore thing, because everyone's like, oh, you feel so much better and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, I feel pretty good now, but I don't know how high goes, right?
Yeah.
And I can't honestly say
reaching higher levels.
Right. And I can't honestly say that it's I don't feel better. I can't say that I feel better. And I think it's because I was already eating so clean that it wasn't like I was cutting out all this crap. I mean, when I ate carbs before, like I said before, it was basically avocados, which are really good. Ezekiel bread, which if you know anything about Ezekiel bread, there's no sugar in that bread. Bananas, apples. I mean, really clean eating. And I mean, probably the not the biggest thing, but the weirdest thing. I mean, I haven't had a soda in over a year, and I can't imagine even sipping on one. Like just looking at that, because I look at that now and I'm like, that is pure poison. Like it is a slow acting poison, sugar, but it's poison and it will kill you. And it's like, I can't fathom picking that up and downing it.
Yeah.
But the weird thing for me is I haven't had a beer in over a year. And that bugs Peyton, our mutual friend Peyton, because he's like, come on, you can have a free day, right? And I'm like, yeah, but dude, I haven't had a beer in a year. I don't know that I want to have a beer. I mean, I was never I know, right? I know.
That's what I can. Well, when Peyton took the job with the Southern Baptists and he couldn't drink beer I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like, and I'm like, in the Bible it talks about like things about essentially calling it doctrines of demons when you forbid people from eating certain foods. And I'm like, don't embrace the doctrines of demons, Peyton. But he's back to drinking beer. Beer is one thing, like, I just love the taste of beer.
Oh, me too.
And so I would, when I do mission trips and things like that, I give it up, no big deal. Like, and I'm fine. Like, it's not like I'm like, oh, I got to drink a beer today. But it's like, man, I love having a beer. And so the idea of like willfully for no reason that isn't the gospel. For me,
it wasn't for me, it was literally the caloric intake. It was like,
oh yeah,
can I justify having, 200 to 400 extra calories?
Yeah.
When I'm trying to cut, like it literally makes no sense. So,
the trick is just don't eat food, drink beer all the time. I'm just kidding. People from my church could be listening and they could be like, oh dear, we're going to have to turn this guy in.
Well, like Martin Luther used to say, food doesn't have beer value, but beer has food value. So
that's awesome. He also made the comment, he's like, we can sit here and drink beer because the gospel is doing its work without us.
Oh,
like
did he?
Essentially like, it was something like, we've already proclaimed the gospel. So let the gospel do its work. We'll sit down and have a beer. And I'm like, praise the Lord.
That's awesome.
That's a good guy right there.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man. So do we want to talk? We want to talk about our.
We got to actually get into some gun talk. So go ahead and bring up the story that you wanted to bring up.
So I hesitated on this, but I think there's a lot of things we should address on this, and we just want to bring up the whole buzz that's going on with this couple in St. Louis. Who were standing outside their mansion, their gigantic mansion, with guns, essentially, supposedly warding off protesters. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, there's a lot of things going on with this story, and so I'm cautious to jump on a side, and so I'm not going to jump on a side here because I still don't know all that's going on, and I keep hearing people in the gun community saying, "Well, there's this that's happening. Well, there's this that's happening." I'm waiting to make a judgment on whether they were right to be standing out there like that. Some people are like, well, hey, they weren't in direct danger. And I'm like, yes, that's probably the case. But on the other hand, they are on their property. They're allowed to do that. And then some people are like, well, hey, the protesters just walking by on the street. That is true. I guess it is a private community, so they weren't supposed to be there. So there's a lot of complicated things.
I guess they broke in, right? They broke in there was an iron gate.
They broke in the gated community, yeah. And to go and protest at the mayor's house who did some shady things. So my thought is that we should probably just look at this from a training and tactical perspective. I'm going to assume that none of the people protesting were going to cause any direct harm. We don't know. But in this situation, doesn't look like they were. But let's say that was the case, that somebody's going to attack a house like this. What's the best course of action? And one of the first things I would say is like, your house, it's better to be inside. You're fortified in there. The last thing you want to do is go stand outside and leave yourself open to gunfire or to anything else being thrown at you, or, identify yourself as a target. When possible, stay inside. If somebody's going to come by and they're going to do whatever to the outside of your home, that sucks. Unless they're throwing Molotov cocktails trying to burn it down, you are still safer to be inside. Your tactical position is going to be better from inside. And so first thing, like standing outside where they didn't need to, and what appears to be just an attempt at intimidation just wasn't the smartest move. Whether or not it's right or wrong, I don't know. But from a tactical perspective, I'm going to say probably not a good move. The other thing is, if anybody's seen pictures of these guys, or this guy and this lady, it is clear in a glance that they have zero training. Did you see what was going on? She's holding the gun as if it's a spray bottle. Not even that well. Like she's got a can of hairspray in her hand, not a firearm. Trigger discipline was hard to see, but it sure looked like they had fingers on triggers a couple of times. So couldn't tell for sure, but it sure looked like really bad trigger discipline. And then the poor guy holding the AR with his pink polo shirt on. And I'm like, this looks like a joke. Like this looks like if Saturday Night Live was going to make a joke about rich people trying to defend their homes on their own. This is what it would be. So I've got some more thoughts, but tell me what your thoughts are, Pete, as we're looking at this.
The images that I saw were definitely no trigger discipline, fingers on triggers.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I mean, I don't care what state you're in. When you, and this is one of the 4 basic rules, right? When you point that gun at a person, that is assault with a deadly weapon.
Yeah.
In California here, if you take out your gun and it's pointed down, that's brandishing a weapon. So it's not assault yet. The second you aim it, doesn't matter if your finger's off the trigger, the second you aim it, it is now assault with a deadly weapon. So you have to know, one, there are consequences. Like, what state was this in that this was going on in?
Missouri, St. Louis, city of St. Louis.
So that's a freer state, so they can probably get away with a lot more than you're definitely going to get away with here in California.
Well, and I understand these are lawyers, or they own a law firm. We'll see what goes on with that.
So maybe they think they know the law. Let me tell you, firearm law is different. If you don't specialize in firearm law,
it's a lot of tricky stuff going on.
Yeah. So, to me, I'm looking at that going, okay, first of all, if you feel the need to brandish the firearm, you don't need to aim it at someone. The second you do that, what if you accidentally pull the trigger? This is the reason why you don't have your finger on the trigger.
Yeah.
Firearms are made to be ergonomic, and it is very comfortable to put your hand on the grip and the finger on the trigger because that's what they're designed to be. That's why you have to fight that, and finger goes alongside of it. It doesn't go in the trigger guard at all. You have to fight the ergonomics of the gun, so that way when you do put your finger there, it is because I am pulling the trigger. That's the reason why it's going there.
Exactly right.
And but I agree with you. I mean, you got cover and you got concealment when you're inside the house or behind something, not just standing out. I mean, they must not have feared. I mean, that's what I would say is you're not actually afraid because you're standing giving them a big target.
So then this tells us everything that we need to know. First of all, they've violated at least 2 of the basic safety rules. They're muzzle flashing like crazy. Finger trigger discipline is non-existent. But then also, I was just thinking about this. They're out there to intimidate. They lost a tactical advantage if they were in danger, and it doesn't look like anybody was targeting their house specifically. Even if we've got trespassers, there doesn't appear to be any attempt at causing harm. I mean, we're looking at a limited amount of video. I recognize that. These are people trying to come out and intimidate, and they're doing a terrible job at it. They just look foolish. And so this is all around not smart. And it looks bad for the gun community, which is one of the things that I was going to maybe add in. To me, this does not look like regular gun owners, right? You and I would never hold firearms like that. Our wives wouldn't hold firearms like that. Honestly, anybody who's even seen someone with training function with a firearm is not going to hold their firearm like that. These are people who have no idea. So to me, and it doesn't, here's supposedly people with money. He doesn't have a cool tricked out AR. He has a real basic that looks, I didn't get a real good look, but it looks pretty much like your Smith & Wesson M&P basic AR that he bought for $500. This sounds like somebody that was I don't know, I'm speculating. This is admitted speculation. These look like panic gun buyers who weren't gun owners, bought a gun at the beginning of Corona because they were freaking out, and now they really want to brandish it and show off that they've got their new guns, but they have zero training. They don't know what they're doing. They're making actual gun owners look bad. And so this is part of why I wanted to bring attention to this. This is not what we are. And this is a couple of yuppies who are acting like fools and haven't had proper training, shouldn't have their guns out anyway, and really need to show up at an actual gun safety course so they can learn that in this situation they should have never even left their house. So that's my thoughts on the situation.
Yeah, it's interesting because, as you know, I do a lot of training, and I paid training, right? So it's not just me showing up at the range and doing stuff, which is great. I mean, everything counts. We've only got indoor ranges around where I live, and it's kind of boring. right?
Yeah.
No rapid fire. You can't do anything fun. So I really hate just going to the range and just plinking around. It's so boring to me. So I love going to classes. I'll pay the money, go to the class, get the training.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks ago, I'm at this training, and there were a lot of people who were there. So we had to double up with somebody to share the stall. And I got stuck with this guy I'd never met before. And you and I would know him as a rent-a-cop.
Yeah.
So that was what his job was. I mean, he was an older guy, and he was basically a rent-a-cop. And he must have been a rent-a-cop who has his permit to carry an exposed firearm. And so good for him. Like, he's like, hey, I'm coming to training. I'm going to, probably get better. But it sounds like he's been doing that pretty much his whole life.
Hey, cool.
And I mean,
rare, by the way,
not the training part, but the working in security or what. I mean, it's a rent-a-cop position. I mean, that's what it is. And I don't remember even what firearm he was shooting. I know it had a decocker on it, so maybe it was a Ruger. I don't know. I probably asked him, but I don't remember what he said. And there was one point, I kid you not, he's done and he's turning around. He hasn't put his gun away, and it's literally aimed right at my belly. And I can see there's a magazine still in the gun.
Oh,
I have no idea if it's loaded. I have no idea if it's decocked, nothing. And I'm so close to him. I literally just, as quickly as I could, ram my hand out and push his gun away back into the stall. And he got the picture. Don't aim your gun at someone.
shoot.
I mean, if it was someone else, they would have gone off on this guy, gotten him kicked out of there. Because, dude, you freaking pointed a gun at me. I have and I can see the magazine is still in it. I don't know if it's loaded, unloaded. It doesn't matter. You don't point an unloaded gun at someone, right? I mean, basic gun rules. You don't do certain things. You have to know where your gun is pointed all of the time, 100% of the time.
That's a guy who is either not well trained.
No, he's definitely not well trained.
He's not, or maybe not trained at all. This might be a guy who got whatever and never really got proper training. I'd be really curious to know how often he goes to the range. Probably not very much. If he does, he's developed a really, really bad habit. And I will acknowledge we can all make mistakes. I totally know that can happen, even well-trained guys. But I'm going to tell you right now, the well-trained guys, you don't see it much. And even a brand new gun enthusiast who has been trained is careful. Yeah. And I like, the guys that we'll have out to shoot out at my place. And I love it when they'll say, listen, I'm relatively new to this. I've had basic gun safety, but please don't hesitate to tell me if I do something wrong or if I need to change something. That kind of person who has that teachable mentality, and it comes up really quickly. And so it makes it more fun because everybody gets to share, like, hey, by the way, if you move, you notice how you're holding the trigger. If you move a little bit over, you're probably going to be a little bit more accurate, all those kinds of things. But also just from a safety perspective, that person who has that teachable mentality is already going to be safer from the very beginning because they're already conscientious. And the person who tends to be a little bit of a braggart tends to be the one that is going to get somebody hurt. And
honestly, it wasn't like the guy was being John Wayne or anything like that. I mean, it literally was a mistake. I could tell it was a mistake.
Yeah.
He didn't have malice in his heart, but that doesn't matter. You're dealing with a firearm.
Yeah.
You have to be exceptionally careful. I remember this one time, we were doing training at the range, and I got permission. I'm like, hey, look, when I'm done with this, can I do a mag dump? And I think it was right after quarantine, right? And I'm like, dude, I just want to do a mag dump. I haven't done one in months. Come on, man. Look. He's like, go ahead. Once you're done, do your mag dump. So I took out my 21 round mag, which I got during Freedom Week for everybody who's freaking out here in California. So it was totally legal, completely legal. Mm-hmm. Pop that sucker in there, like bam, 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 go through the whole mag, take the magazine out, and I put it in my holster. And then the next time I go to shoot, I realize, so I get back in the stall, take the gun out, and I'm like, oh, my slide's not back.
Mm-hmm.
Put the next magazine in, go to rack it, and as soon as I pull it back, I see there was still a round in the gun.
Whew.
I thought it was empty. But again, I didn't break any rules, right? Because I still stuck it back in the holster. And I was cool. Like, we can have a hot firearm during training if they tell us, we're going to be running hot firearms. Just, you actually literally, you do the mag change while the gun's in the holster. You leave it always in the holster. And so, I mean, I didn't break any rules or anything, but here I thought it was empty. It wasn't empty. But I also wasn't pointing the dang gun at anybody, right?
Exactly. Like, that's where they say, treat the gun as if it's loaded, even if you know it's not. Because
what if it is?
It's layers of safety. I keep saying, like, you really have each of the 4 rules of safety are really a layer of defense. So if something goes wrong, if the first net didn't catch you, nets 2 through 4 will. And that's just part of how we are safe. And you have multiple levels of safety, and it goes well. The other thing, this gets me thinking about the importance of fatherhood in gun safety. Because when I was, 10, I'm probably younger than that, I'm out shooting with my dad with his single action 22 revolver, Colt cowboy style, but it's a 22, which is a great thing for a kid to learn on. It's single action. You got to cock it every time, less to go wrong. I, shot that cylinder empty, and my dad is standing kind of parallel to me. And when I turn around, I have my gun not pointed straight down, kind of at a 45-degree angle. So I'm still not pointing at anybody, but as I turn, it's getting uncomfortably close, right? Like, I still would have probably been pointed to the ground, but and my dad so graciously, like, whoa, and he warns me, has me do it again the right way, right? And that burned into my mind, muzzle discipline, right? And I'm like, it was a minimal mistake, and my dad didn't ream me out. He's like, whoa. He just very sternly, very cautiously reminded me, that's actually really dangerous, son. Now do it the right way. I have never forgotten. To the point where I'm probably where I'm like, whoa, it could be an angle. Like, I've even annoyed people with my being over the top when it comes to muzzle discipline. But anyway, all that said, that's why I hate everybody. Teach your kids to shoot guns. Teach your kids gun safety. Teach your kids knife safety, for crying out loud. My kids are learning gun safety before I'm really even letting them spend that much time around my guns.
Well, and I think that's a key thing right there, because what happens with kids is curiosity. Yeah. So when you keep the gun as like, oh, it's this special thing over here, and no one ever gets to touch it, and wait until you're older. Well, then they start getting really curious about it, and as they get older and start becoming braver, then it's like, well, let me go see this gun thing. So I don't want my kids to be like, guns are, only when I'm older. Yeah. I've taken my son shooting. There's only one range around here that I could take him at his age shooting at. Technically, this range, they don't care how old your kids are. They leave that up to you. It's an outdoor range. And that's the problem for me. It's an hour away. Otherwise, I'd probably take my daughter up there as well. And I haven't taken her. She's 5 years old. But we took his 22. I bought him a 22 rifle that it's a bolt action, because I wanted him to learn to aim. I didn't want him to have a semi-automatic and just boing, 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 boing. That would be me, right? just unload it. And that was how we started. And I'll take him there more. And certainly when he turns 10, then we can go to the local range here. I'll take him a lot more, just so he can, this is what we do. This is how we train. This is how we do safety. And I wish I had a closer range that I could take him to, even as young as he is. Yeah. So yeah, all that stuff's important.
That's right, man. Well, and I'm seeing more and more. I'm thinking about, I was pretty young when I got a BB gun, learned the basics of safety, and then got to spend some time with the least dangerous type of gun. And then moved up to a 22, and just the process where, like, I was taught and I had to follow all the rules of safety with the BB gun. It's the same thing. And I remember I made a backdrop mistake with my BB gun, and broke a window. And I got the whole, like, hey, here's how this whole thing works. And and I learned about backstops and all that kind of stuff. And you learn.
See, and that to me is the thing that cops have to be most cautious of. And maybe they are, maybe they aren't, I don't know. But certainly when we see all the civilians, if you will, that get shot by police, it makes me think they're not paying attention to their background very much, because you get tunnel vision, right? I mean, that's a very common thing. You will get tunnel vision in a shootout. And so you're not looking at the background. You're not looking at anything, but you have to get yourself out of that and think about that. Like, we had a situation, it was in LA, it was a couple of years back, where there was a gunman running into, I believe it was a Sprouts, a supermarket. Okay. And the cop from way too far away, like, is unloading his magazine. He ends up killing civilians because he's just unloading. Like, I don't remember how far he was, but it was like 40 yards. And he's just like, dude, that's too far. That's too far. I realize the adrenaline's pumping, the other dude's shooting at you, but first of all, you're shooting into literally a supermarket. Like, what's going to stop it? The bag of potato chips?
Yeah.
Nothing's stopping that bullet from continuing down its path. You have to think about that crap all the time. Yeah. And as a civilian, it means to us, don't shoot. I mean, more often than not, it means unless your life is imminently in danger or that of someone else, you need to just get the heck out of Dodge.
Yep. That's exactly right. Well, and that's where even some knowledge of ballistics of your individual caliber that matters, right? Like, there's different things going to happen with a 357 than with your 44. Different things going to happen with, well, more apt would be with your, 380 from a or a 9 from a 357. Or obviously we start talking about rifles. People just don't understand. So many think a bullet is a bullet. It's going to be stopped by whatever. They don't understand. And man, there's huge, huge differences. And the movies don't help us, of course, because in the movies, like, bullets are stopped by virtually anything.
Everyone's got a fully automatic AR, right? That's not even an AR, but everyone's is fully automatic in the movies.
Oh, drives me nuts. Don't even get me started. So, So all that said, this is where it comes back to basics of safety matter, even for self-defense. Some tactical knowledge matters, even for basic self-defense of your home. The couple in St. Louis did not follow good practices related to home defense. You gotta do that stuff right. Training matters. Get yourself trained. Shoot, just watch some YouTube videos. Not as good as actually training. There's some dudes on there that know their stuff and get you understanding the concept of how you're supposed to handle yourself in a potential defensive scenario. Lots of good stuff out there. Get training is pretty important.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Go ahead and give Lake Erie their plug.
Yeah, speaking of training, everybody, you're going to have to get out. We actually have one-on-one individual training with firearms experts. Most of them are ex-military, or current military. We can get you some really good training, and we can actually get you some time on the simulator. You can sign up for an hour. It's like $25 for an hour of training. Everybody should do that. You should do that several times, actually. Come on out, go to... do it several times a month. So check out learms.net. And of course, we've got our CCW classes, and what a great time to be building ARs. Come on out. We'll see you soon.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining us on this episode of the From Concealment podcast. We'll be back next week and talk to you more then. Take care, everybody.
You've been listening to the From Concealment podcast with Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams. Be sure to tune in next week for more gun talk. Also, check out the From Concealment website for more shooting-related goodness at FromConcealment.com.